evening today, Crystal, and then we're going to look at the midterm exam, which is online. It'll open up on Sunday. It'll be open all week. You'll have the week to choose when you want to do it. There's these review items here we can look at. And then I want to spend most of the time looking at Project 2, which, as you know, we're changing gears. We're going to do a project which is going to be based on your original reporting. In other words, you'll be writing about real people and their activities. So I will talk you through that. Hey there, Ayla. How you doing? Okay, so we're going to do that. Before all of that, Sheila has it's certificate season right now. In other words, the deadline for applying for a certificate has been extended until the end of this month. So I am just wanting to see if I can help anybody get their certificate that they are qualifying for. First of all, is there anybody here who's already aware of this and is like already turned in their application for something? Awesome. Okay.
Wait.
For a certificate?
Is it for the fall or spring?
Just as long as you have turned in a certificate for now, application, a petition for a certificate.
I'm ready for one.
Okay, all right.
Thanks.
So we got Ayala, we got Olya, we got Dylan, we got Brian, and we got Noah. Thank you. So, Jessica as well?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Is it for, like, you're almost done, or just that you want to be,
If
like...
you're currently in the courses that would add up to a
yes.
certificate, you can already apply.
Okay, cool.
So this might be news to you. Jessica, you raised your hand. Have you turned in some paperwork?
No,
on
not
that?
yet.
Okay, so you would be a great candidate for what I'm saying, Matthew.
Convergence Media?
And are you like about ready to get it?
Probably.
Okay, I don't have the paperwork on that, so I'd say talk to Sheila, but I'll give you the petition for the certificate just in case.
Okay.
And then Desiree, you have your hand up?
I'm not sure yet though.
Okay, well, let me just show you our most the most likely certificate, which I'm hawking this one because my classes, many of the classes I teach are part of this foundation certificate, which is a total of 17 units. So look, here are the required courses, and then so you're right now in Intro to Writing for Electronic Media, and you're certainly bound to pass it. So you'll get your 3 units there, right? So if you're looking through this list here, it would be 100, 119, 120, the audio production. So I know some of you are in there with me or with George. 119, you can doing it online or in person and stuff. So if you have those, you're pretty close to getting this certificate. So take a quick or a good look at that right now. And I'll be, if it all adds up for you immediately right now that you could get this certificate, maybe you can fill this in and give it to me today. But otherwise, I can give you. So Matthew, you're not sure, but you should talk to Sheila and Crystal. What
Yeah.
do you think? You think you're in enough to get that
Yeah,
certificate?
I'm on
Awesome.
thing one.
Okay, Desiree.
There's like what the digital media portfolio one.
So
That's only when.
That is a late start on November 12th, and
Oh,
I'm
really?
teaching it online. So it's a 1-unit class. It's like there's 8 modules in it, and it's not a heavy commitment. So and if you can fill this in on the idea that you're actually going to take that, so because Sheila's she can do the paperwork that says, hey, this is a late start course. So.
Okay.
Now, anybody? Yes, Jessica. There you go. Okay. So we have many other certificates, like Matthew is interested in the Convergent Media certificate, which is a massive one with lots of units in it and stuff. But as I said, I'm just focusing on this one today because it's it's only 17 units, and many people can get it within 2 semesters of work. So Ayala, you already applied for something. You don't need one of these
No.
papers.
I might, but I know I'm not going to be done until next semester.
Okay. Well, then look at it next semester.
Okay.
Okay. Everybody else potentially who needs this got it. So if you're thinking that, if you're thinking you've got everything necessary, turn it in to me by the end of class, and I can take it over to Sheila, and she'll be super happy to have it already. And if you're not sure, make an appointment with Sheila, and you can figure out, exactly when and what you qualify for. And by the way, Foundation stacks with other certificates, so many of these classes are in other certificates. You could be on your way to getting another one. Okay.
When did you say that class starts? November what?
November 12th is the first day online, so just speak to me. I can give you an act code if you
Okay.
do it. Moving right along, so you can see Module 7. There it is. So it's published. I don't believe it was published until yesterday when I realized it was not published. So first up, midterm review. So the midterm is going to be opening up on Sunday night, Monday morning, right, when we usually open a new week. So it's open all the way through week 8, so from Monday morning to the next Sunday. So that would be closing on October 20th is the date. So the midterm, it's an online quiz. There's 50 multiple choice or true-false type questions. You have 50 minutes to take the exam. You can take the exam twice. Your highest score will be retained. So Canvas is set to shuffle the questions and answers, which means that the second time you take it, you're going to get different questions than the first time. Not 100% different, but they kind of draw as randomly. But you should see, a certain amount of change within the questions. Okay? So each time you take the exam, it will be somewhat different. A fixed number of questions will be drawn randomly from the question banks. So these are the number of questions that will be associated with each chapter. So chapters 1 and 2, there are more questions about that wind up on the exam. So spend more time studying chapters 1 and 2. Remember, chapter 1 has a lot of concepts from rhetorical sources like Aristotle about dramatic structure, about characterization, about building audience empathy, pity, sympathy. Those are some of the key terms that are there, right? And remember, questions from chapter 2 are more about the terminology and structure of actual television and film scripts. So there's 15 questions on that. And then things get lighter. 5 questions from chapter 3, which, if you remember, was more about, setting your life up so that you can rewrite creatively. And then also, that's the chapter that deals with the pre-script documents like the outline, the treatment, the synopsis, and everything that helps you, the log line. So the things that you did prior to actually sitting down and writing a formatted script. Chapter 4 has to do with script formats, and so although it does deal with a whole bunch of different formats, we are interested in the screenplay format, which you have just written in, and then the 2-column. I believe there's one question about the 2-column format, which is what we'll be doing going ahead. Right? The rest of that chapter is not particularly relevant. And then 5 and 6 are about drama and comedy, and so there's 5 questions drawn from each of those. So again, each of these chapters has question banks, and so there's, it's pulling questions from those banks and putting them in. So when you take the exam a second time, if you choose to, you'll get a different mix, basically. But you'll still get the same proportions. So 1 and 2 will be heavily questioned versus the rest are much lighter. Okay? So on the following page is so a rundown. For instance, in chapter 1, what is the section topic that is being questioned, and either Kindle or textbook, at least. So if you're wondering, okay, in chapter 1, what do I need to study? What do I need to read? It's look on this page, basically, and it runs through all of the stuff. Okay. So this will be up until the exam closes on October 20th. So you choose, when you've got at least 50 solid minutes where you won't be disturbed, where you can take the exam once and you can take it twice if you're not satisfied. So obviously, since you can take it twice, it's not going to display the correct answers to you, right? Because then it would just be like, oh, okay, I know the answer to that one now. Let's take it again. So it will show your score, and you can can decide, oh, I'm happy with 90 or 100 or something, but it won't show you what the exact answers are. So you can take it again. Okay? Questions about that? Yeah.
Should we look at our quiz? Is some of the quiz questions possibly going to be on the midterm? Or
Well, some of them are. However, you can't go back and look at them. Yeah. So it's sort of more out of this. So what I'd say is, look at the concept, and then studies. Look in most of these exams or questions. Sometimes it'll quite specifically say definition, pathos, definition, or something like that. But typically, most of these questions are based on trick. I don't know. You've all taken these multiple choice questions before, right? When I'm writing these, they're not from the textbook people. As you can tell, periodically there's a mistake, and I thank you folks for writing back and say, hey, that one, the actual answer was yes, because I'm doing these. So what do you do when you're doing these things? You take a definition and you write the concepts. Like, is it A, B, C, or D, right? Each, different concepts. So I'll supply the definition, you supply the concept is the correct answer. Or on the reverse, I might give a concept, and then you have to choose either definition A, B, C, or D, right? Or another common one is take an example, and then say this is an example of what concept? Is this an example of pity or sympathy or foreshadowing? So you will see most questions are related to this. So I can't guarantee that every one of them is, because I kind of make a question whenever I can see one that is going to work. There may also be a concept or an idea with 3 potential parts to it, and so then I might write it something and say, well, what is not part of this notion here, for instance? What is not part of what Aristotle meant by pity? Sympathy, empathy, antipathy, and maybe one other thing which is kind of ridiculous and not part of it. He's saying, well, which is the one that doesn't fit? But this is basically how these questions are done, largely. I can't guarantee that everyone is like that, but that's it. Okay. So I'm thinking by giving you 2 chances at it, there will certainly be questions that repeat from the first time you try it to the second time, and there are certainly questions which you've already had on the quizzes already. So, although I can't make those available. Okay. Questions? All right. I'm hoping everyone's going to do very well based on this approach. If it turns out that it's a total disaster, I don't see it being that way, but we'll find some extra credit or something that can be done to keep you in here. Largely, I mean, I think your main work is writing, but this is how we're doing it. Okay. No questions? The stuff is there. Fantastic. Right. So now, project 2. Going forward, we're changing things up a great deal. We're going to be writing basically used documentary project. And so our objective is going to be to write a 5-minute sort of television feature script in a 2-column script format. So in the 2-column script format, there's 1 column for audio, which is what people say. It could be in voiceover. It could be the audio taken from an interview, like a soundbite, basically. And then there's 1 column for video. And that would be what we see. So sometimes we see people speaking on camera. Sometimes we have what's called B-roll, which is shots that are taken by a cinematographer. If you're covering an event, there'll be different shots. Now, a reporter typically has a good idea of what they're looking for when they go out in the field and do this type of story. They may even have a list of shots that they want to get that they'll share with the cinematographer, or they talk it over together while they're out there doing this type of work. And increasingly in the news business, 1 person does it all. one way or another, you wind up with a script with the audio in it and the video. It's nowhere near as established a format as feature film script writing, but the 2-column script is standard. Now, as to what kind of exact terminology and layout goes into the 2 columns, that depends on the television station, basically, that's doing this, or the network. But we will have our particular format. So the project is split up into steps, which is supposedly good practice for online courses. It helps you just stay on schedule, and it breaks it down into chunks that we can present in modules to help provide the information. So we're doing that again. So just the way that we ask you to come up with a character and then a log line, and then so in this case, I'm going to ask you by October 24th to come up with a story idea. And a central part of the story is there at least one person that you can talk to between now and November 3rd to get an interview. You will not be putting the interview in large chunks into your script. You'll be just taking 15-second sound bites out of that interview. But that would be the first thing. So story idea with somebody who's accessible to you. And anyone who's been doing some journalism in this class, I know we have some folks who have, know that one of the biggest challenges is just getting somebody to actually talk to you and organizing it so that it happens in a timely manner. A lot of reporters still use the telephone because emails don't get returned. And you wait several days. Think, is it polite to email today and say you didn't reply to my email? It's a lot easier to call somebody a couple times and say, oh, you were at your desk yesterday. So you will find that getting in contact with someone can be a challenge. So in the steps, story idea, interview questions. There's information in the chapter we won't discuss because we're not going to meet each other again. I'm so used to doing this face to face. Thinking about what makes good interview questions for this type of getting people to elaborate on what they're doing. Sound bites. Once you've got your interview, I don't want you to take huge chunks of it and put it into a script. I want you to transcribe whatever parts of it are useful to you and create sound bites out of it. Maybe 3, maybe 4 sound bites, maximum 15 seconds long. Okay, so brief excerpts from the interview. So this is something where people often misunderstand and they'll submit like a 15-minute, 15-page interview or something. That's not the idea. Most of the story is you stringing together these sound bites. And then finally, the 2-column scripts by November 17th, just before Thanksgiving. So we've got 5 weeks to create this story. Typically, this would be done in 2 to 3 days in a television station. There are many news items which are done within a day. And something like a feature like this, you might have 2 to 3 days in order to write it, make the calls, book the interviews, go out and shoot the interviews, come back, transcribe what's necessary, go to the editor with a list of shots that you need, and do your voiceovers and put it together in what's called a package. So we have time to do this compared to professional practice, but still, I would say, the most important part is to find your story and jump in. So just looking through more of the steps, once you decide on your story, contact and interview a source and line up a second source, somebody who can also talk to you about it. When selecting a story, you want to do local news. So we don't need to worry about contacting, Kurt Volker or someone who's just been before the congressional committee or whatever. It's all local. So don't be intimidated by, hey, I don't know anybody who's doing anything really newsworthy. We're working more at a local level, even maybe like a micro-local level. You may want to do a story about something that's happening at City College. You may want to do a story about somebody who's doing something in your immediate community. We've had stories about people in their church organizing to do disaster relief down in Texas. We've had stories about an old guy who got together kids in his neighborhood and we helped them create a lemonade stand just to kind of teach them a little bit about business. The student was just really interested in like, who is this guy? What's he doing? We've had plenty good stories of people who are working on City College. We've had people, just many things. Bernal Heights Film Festival last year. Great story. Just talking to interviewing the organizers of the festival. So we're looking very local, as I'm saying. It will be so local that your audience is the college, like the Guardsman, etc. Magazine. They do great work here, and some people are involved in those things, and so that could be the basis for some good reporting there. Now you're not shooting anything, right? We're just writing scripts here. But some students have taken their scripts and produced them in Nisha's classes as well, so which is really cool when that happens. We had a story about roller skating, people roller skating in the evenings through San Francisco, and the student wrote the script here, and then in Nisha's class they actually shot the piece. Matthew, were you on that?
No, I wasn't.
No, you weren't. Okay. Yeah, it's been going on for a few years. So although you won't shoot anything, you'll be doing the interviews, and we could be writing a script that you could eventually in another class. Okay. So the idea is it's real local, and the reason for that is that people are accessible. You can't call stuff a national figure who you don't know, but you can probably call on somebody who's doing something in your local community, right? So I tell people. Consider doing a profile or consider covering an event. And sometimes the two meet together as well. So a profile would be find somebody interesting to talk to who's doing something interesting. A sit-down interview where, yeah, you're a really cool person, but you haven't really done anything in the last couple of years or something is, it doesn't feel very newsworthy compared to, I don't know, maybe it's an artist and they have exhibition coming up or something like that they want to talk about. We had a story about food trucks, which focused on somebody just starting up their food truck and the challenge of that. Basically permits, getting into places and stuff. That was a cool story. Speaking of food, we've had a profile of a chef with a sort of cafe in Mission that they were trying to do stuff with. So profile, you're looking for somebody interesting, and you want to talk to them, so they need to be accessible to you. An event, as you figure, maybe it's somebody organizing, a gallery owner who's organizing an event. So you're speaking to the organizer, and to, second source could be a participant. Organizer would be a participant, or even a member of the public. For a profile, you'd want to talk to the person, and also maybe somebody who knows them. So, second source would be somebody who knows them. Primary source, participant. Sorry. Primary source, organizer. First, second. So, who you want to talk to should be somebody who's involved in some significant event. Okay. Really boring second source is like, yeah, well, I saw the outside of the store, it looked really cool, but I don't know anything about it. So rather you want people who are involved, who are doing something, basically. So I think we all know somebody or who's doing something interesting or some kind of event that's coming up. And you have until October 24th. So you've got 2 weeks in order to think that up and then contact somebody involved and try to book the time for an interview. Okay? Just having the idea is not good enough because it falls through very often. As you hope to, particularly if you're further away from people, they're a friend on social media or something, and you try to reach out to them and you just never hear back. So then you gotta, choose another story. So that's a big challenge. So any questions about story idea, the first step? Yes, Matt?
Recently I interviewed a gal. Can I use her as a...
Yes, you could. Yeah. Other questions? Story idea? So I'm thinking sometimes these two things meet. It's like there's a person who's doing something interesting, and you can either profile them, or it could be more the event that they're actually involved in. That happened on. I have a couple of examples up here. That actually happened on this second story, where Eric was working on the Bernal Heights Film Festival. It's called Bernal Spirit. And so, he initially reached out to the organizers of the festival, got an interview with them, and they put him in touch with a young filmmaker. This was, her first time, so it was Zoe Salnave, I guess, or Sal, I'm not sure how you would say it. She's from Los Angeles, but she was showing her film up here, and of course she was interested in talking to him because everyone wants to kind of, advance their career and stuff. So he got a nice interview with her. And so, although he started out just talking to the event organizer, it kind of immediately grew into, also covering her, where she's at in her career, and what the reception of the film was. Just to kind of round it out and make a nice story out of it. And so you can see there the sort of 2-column format of this, right? And when it comes time to write the script, there's certainly instructions about that. It's a little messed up because of the way it was done. The story's great, the writing is great, it's just the layout of the script is a little messed up. Here's another one, a profile. Texacala Jones is a pseudonym for Araceli Frias, who's a student, was a student with us, and she now works for City and County of San Francisco. She does videos for them. And she was involved in a project, strong workforce project that focused on women in construction careers and things like that. And she did a couple of terrific interviews with women entrepreneurs who are working in that area. And so they're here. That I think she found very gratifying, and was a good project, and she actually shot this eventually as well. So there's a couple of examples in there, and I think that can be useful as you think it over. So as I blather on, any more ideas or questions about the story part? Yeah, Desiree.
What about my daughter, she's having a little fall festival at her school. Is that something that'd be okay, or is that too small?
It kind of depends on what you're thinking about as you're trying to serve a particular audience. And so I've done plenty of stuff for my kids' school as well, so I wouldn't say it's irrelevant, but you're trying to serve an audience. So what are the people who are likely to at the school, what do they need to know about that? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So think that through. Mm-hmm. But again, some schools have over 1,000 kids in them, so you're touching 2,000-3,000 people, and it's a job, right? Writing a newsletter or writing, there's every one of these schools. My kid's school has, I think, 4 people in audiovisual. I don't know about yours. Do you know how many people are working in audiovisuals?
No.
There's going to be a few anyway. And they make, $70,000-$80,000 a year. So it's hard to survive here in San Francisco on that, but that's what your teachers make, so if they're lucky. I wouldn't sniff at it. But just think about it, because what you're trying to do is, you're trying to inform an audience, and so you've got to think through, well, it's not so much I'm going to make a record of this fun thing that happened, but rather like, what does my audience need to know about this?
Okay.
So think that through. Ayla?
Okay, I might have an idea. Shoot it down if you don't think it's all that great. I was thinking about doing something regarding hair in like the African American community. One of my closest friends is rocking the natural hair, and she's been doing it for years. And I was watching an episode of Mixed Dish, which is basically a spinoff of Blackish, and they were talking about what is good hair in the community, straight, kinky, quote unquote, air quotes. So I'm thinking about interviewing her just because she's been, not because she's my close friend, but more so because she's been doing a natural hairstyle for maybe a year or two. And I just want to know, how does she even get started on it? Have she even received compliments or even insults about it? Because that's kind of big in our community. And that's kind of been a topic and a kind of an issue ever since I've known. That's an idea.
So is she wearing the hairstyle, or is she doing it for people?
No, she's wearing a poop ball. She's not doing it. She did it for herself.
Got it. Okay.
So ever since I've known her, she's been wearing a poop ball.
Well, I mean, I think it's a good issue. I think she's an interesting, maybe secondary character. I think, can you find somebody who is more in an active role about it? I mean, this is interesting in the sense.
Well,
that-
California also just passed a law, so maybe you could take that angle of
Yeah.
like that
What's
you
the
can't
law?
discriminate against black people for the way their hair
Yep.
grows out of their head.
I
That
just
is
saw that on
super
that episode
topical.
too.
That is
I just found
I
that.
do have an idea.
What's up?
So there's a lot of angles you can go at it. I think it was, if you look back, I think it was the Obama girls were also kind of criticized in the beginning for that, which is what started this. I think one of the things that started this whole ball rolling some years ago. I would interview somebody who's worn the hairstyle for a long time. I would interview somebody who does the hair, and there's numerous books on the good hair issue. I think I even have one at home. So I would like interview an author or somebody who's like in the community who is an authority on the subject, and that way you would have like the point of view of somebody that does the actual style, that's been doing it for a long time, somebody that's wearing it out in the community, and then actual like academic commentary on it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I think the military just made some rules about that too. There could be as much discrimination. That was a big issue where, especially black women would have to spend a lot of money to get their hair, so it was fit into the whatever, they were looking for.
Interesting.
Yes, within the past couple of years, I think they
This
Come
is
forward a
excellent.
little
Thank
bit.
you, folks, for weighing in. I mean, this often happens, that you got a room full of people, collective knowledge and intelligence kicks in, and you just go so much further. That's why there's newsrooms and editorial meetings, and why you'll find a lot of journalists are active on Twitter or on social media. It's just like, hey, I'm doing a story on this. Do you know anybody? So that's great. Thank you. And does anyone else want to kind of float an idea and see if anyone has some leads for them? Matthew?
I'm producing a show pretty soon here, and I need to use this kind of a format for my work anyway. So
Do
it'll
you have a
help me.
specific topic in mind?
It's called 6th Street News, a news source for those housed or unhoused.
Okay, all right. So now that is a really interesting audience and topic area.
'Cause I have all
Any
sorts of-
story ideas come to mind?
Well, there's a woman in my neighborhood who believes in stewardship. So one of her ideas is there's a lot that could be reused until it finally gets built up. But right now it's just a vacant lot that's more or less an open sewer. And she says, yeah, we could take stewardship of it and put housing in there, this or that. But she's got an idea. Then there's,
That is a very good one to pursue if you
yeah.
want to go.
Actually,
down
I
there.
did interview her, And then we've got, like the same thing where, what do you call it, ejection sites might be coming in again, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just anything that revolves around the hood.
Okay,
Basically.
absolutely, and that's, local, that's super, people are accessible to you, you've already managed to reach out to them.
It's called 6th Street News,
Got
so
it.
it's a news
Okay.
source.
So, another issue is your second source in journalistic practice. If you're working on a story that's at all controversial, give a shot at finding a second source which has an alternative point of view. So in your case, you're talking to, a neighborhood advocate who's into stewardship. Can you get someone to speak for another side of that story? Yeah, there was, where was it, down in Hayes Valley, there was that, basically a park, and everybody got evicted and kicked out of it, and now it's all built up and stuff. I don't know, does anybody know anybody in this area that Matthew might also be able to talk to, especially from kind of another point of view on the story?
Housing and homelessness. Homelessness and hunger and issues. Hunger
Did you know George Coster, who's working?
at the Chronicle.
No, Coster was a student here who's also, he works a lot for a nonprofit, and I've been still seeing him around this San Francisco Public Press, which
Oh, yeah?
you guys heard of SFPP, San Francisco Public Press? They just started up a radio station. They want to do some public affairs shows.
There you go. Nice.
So they're sharing a station with KXSF. I've been volunteering for decades. And they have a web-based publication, but it's also in print 4 times a year, and they're really very good. Coster works for them fundraising, but he did a whole thing about Vallejo, like a 10-part thing on Vallejo and their woes, and he's also heavily into housing advocacy. So you know what? I'll put you guys together in an email. You probably would have somebody who would come at it, less from the neighborhood level,
Yeah.
more from the,
Yeah,
institutional.
the big picture.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay, so give that a thought too. Again, definitely if you're working in a professional news organization, your responsibility is not just to maybe a progressive audience, although that could primarily be, your audience, but also give a thought as to other points of view. Not saying interview the landlords association necessarily or something like that, but again, there are many interests involved in something like appropriating land, even temporarily. Who actually monitors what goes on there, for instance? I noticed the Guardsman has a big story about communities of people living in vehicles around City College. So far everything's cool. But what happens if somebody really disruptive comes into that? That could really
Yeah. When you think further on that, there's so many different legal things that could come into play, and it is nice. That's how I used to live. They call it boondocking. Boondocking is usually when you do it in the Walmart parking lot, but you can boondock
We
anywhere.
had at least one story in this class a year ago. That was the story. It was the student was living that way himself. And we had before the academic senate, we had a resolution which we didn't vote up because the fear was just okay, we're going to support this, but what happens if our campus security is already stretched? Imagine if there's having to protect.
Or there's a fire in the motorhome.
There's so many things. Yeah. Okay. Anyhow, the great thing about having a class that meets face to face is we can talk about all of this. Reach out to whoever, either in the class or outside of the class, who might be able to help you find somebody working on the issue that you're interested in. Okay? And initially, your own acquaintances are great. Just think through who's your audience, how are they going to be informed by this, and everything I've heard so far has an audience, I think, that is appropriate for the interest. So think it through, and the thing is to get on it right away because it takes time for people to get back to you. Then you got to organize when can you can interview them on the phone. You can interview them through email if necessary, which is not something you could do if this was actually being produced for television, right? Then you have to have an actual face-to-face. I mean, I've seen occasionally a Skype. I've even seen a reporter hold up his phone and basically have somebody talking that way, but it looks, doesn't look all that impressive. Typically you want to be present, but for the purposes of writing a script and with our time constraints and such, you can interview people that way. Okay, cool. When it comes time to, let's say you've got the interview and you've recorded 10 minutes of somebody talking, I'm not asking you to go through and transcribe all those 10 minutes. I'm asking you, typically what we do is you run through the tape, or the file nowadays, we used to call it a tape because it was a tape. You'd run through it until you reach the points where you feel you've got an interesting soundbite. Even while we were on location, let's say you're at an event, we used to be writing down cues. Oh, okay, at 15 minutes they said this, because you're under a lot of time pressure. So if you've already got time, even as you're asking your questions and stuff, like just say, oh, there was something good in question 3 or question 4, so you can get to it faster. Run through the tape, find those, and transcribe them word for word. Okay, what you think you're going to need. 15 seconds, time it out for yourself. You probably think 15 seconds is way longer than it actually is. It's the time for somebody to say 2-3 sentences maximum. And typically they say, the average soundbite is really 10 seconds. I go 15 to give you a little bit more. So in a written piece of journalism, this would be the stuff that's quoted, stuff that people actually say. In broadcast, it's a soundbite. And soundbites are pretty short. So don't think you can tell your whole story just by gluing together sound bites. You can't do it. You basically are taking sound bites either because they succinctly give important information, but more likely it's because they communicate character and emotion. And so this, when you're reading through the textbook, Hewitt is trying to say, well, these are still characters in a story. They still have conflicts, they have contrasts, character, the way they say things, they have diction. All of these things are important. So as you run through your tape of your interview, look for that, where they actually appeared emotional, or where they actually, came down and highlighted in a quick little bite the kinds of conflicts they're facing. Damn it, if City Hall only knew what we're going through, they'd let us take this land. Now, that is a good soundbite. Versus, in 1963, there were 14 parcels of empty land, and now in 2014, that is for you to say, or put up a graphic, right? So when you're going through your tape looking for bites, you're looking for character, emotion, direct conflict, all that stuff that you can fit it in, terrific, all right? And you're pulling those out, so that would be the second step, sound bites, right? Sound bites and narration. So now, let's say you've got, if I'm drawing like just a little kind of schematic of what your story is, you're going to have these bites, and now you need to write things like voiceover or on-camera appearances. So now you're going to be writing stuff for you, the reporter, to say. And this is really where you tell the story. Okay, so don't count on the sound bites as moving the story forward. You move the story forward in your voiceovers or on your on-camera presentations, and the sound bites are there for, as we said, conflict, character, information if it's succinct, but usually you're going to supply that information. So you are the one leading this in your, what I'm calling narration. We've all seen reporters on camera. So when you pull that together, the next step is to think, okay, I now know what's in my audio column, right? I've got sound bites, I've got voiceover, I've got what I say on camera or other people say on camera. I've got the talking part. Now television is visual, so what can I put into the visual track, right? And that would be either B-roll, so what kind of shots do you need to cover particular event. That can be very simple. You're imagining this, right? You don't go out and shoot it. You're imagining, I need a long shot of, the street corner, which shows that, as Matthew said, it's like an open sewer or something like that. I need shots of people getting together around this issue. I need medium shots or close-ups of people that I'm interviewing and such. Also, television as a verbal medium has a real hard time putting hard numbers and facts out there. So you may use graphics to convey certain statistics. So it's really boring to hear your person talk about, the percentage of unoccupied lots. But if you can put up a graphic of it, then your audience is going to remember it. So in the video column, you're typically writing B-roll or graphics. So graphics to support your idea, slides, charts, tables, maps, etc. You gather those up. The source can be the internet. The source can be, just, hey, I want my graphics department to make me a graphic of this. Okay? So that's what would go on the final step here, where you're putting all of this into 2 columns. And the textbook will talk about how to put what jargon is necessary. But for instance, when there's a voiceover, you write VO. When we actually see the reporter, we write on cam, right? We write B-roll when we're identifying shots. This would be, Chiron is one bit of jargon which identifies a graphic, and so on. So that terminology will be in chapter 4 of the textbook. And also there's examples that I'll be putting up there as well. So that'll be the final step. And the hard work of reporting this and of interviewing and of finding the sound bites and stuff will already be done as you put all of this into the script. Some questions about that step? Okay, cool. There's a funny video here, but this shows the cliched television package format, which is in a very short format. But it shows you basically the structure of a news story like the one we're talking about.
Before long, a standard news report visual language established itself, one that's immediately recognisable to anyone. Me has this report.
Your anchor.
It starts here, with a lacklustre establishing shot of a significant location. Next, a walkie-talkie preamble from the auteur, pacing steadily towards the lens, punctuating every other sentence with a hand gesture and ignoring all the pricks milling around him like he's gliding through the fucking Matrix, before coming to a halt and posing a question. What comes next? Often something like this, a filler shot designed to give your eyes something to look at while my voice babbles on about facts. Sometimes it'll slow down to a halt, turn monochrome, and some of those facts will appear one by one on the screen. This is followed by the obligatory shots of overweight people with their faces subtly framed out, after which the report is padded out with a selection of lazy and pointless vox pops.
Usually get some inane chatter from people.
I think they do have too much. I think what we want to hear is actually what's happening and not what other people think of it.
I hate these sound bites. I don't want some punter's opinion usually. No.
Another bit of dull visual abstraction to plug another gap now before the report segues gracefully into a bit of human interest courtesy of some dowdy man opening letters in a kitchen and explaining how he's been affected by the issue.
When I'm watching the news, I don't really, there's a person talking to me, telling me what's going on, and I don't really listen to what they're saying. It's just news. It's just news.
He, unfortunately, was boring, so to wake you up, this is an animated chart, this is a silhouette representing the average family, and this is a lighthouse keeper being beheaded by a laser beam. As we near the end of the report, illustrative shots of pedestrians and signs and a pipe at a window. And then the final summary, ending on a whimsical shot of something nearby, accompanied by a wry sign-off. If you're lucky, a bit of wordplay fit for a king, or in other words, a regent's treat. Charlie Brooker, Newswipe, London.
So, a little bit of fun. Charlie Brooker, as some of you know, is the executive producer and creator of Black Mirror. He's good at a lot of stuff. So that was like the format with no content in it. So making fun of all the cliches, but it has the basic things that we want to do. In other words, we are moving between sound bites and the reporter's narration, using appropriate B-roll and graphics in order to move the story along. But again, he had no story, but the idea is that you are pushing forward a story with a collection of sound bites and information that goes together. All right? So that is, that's the ultimate outcome of it, at least in a humorous way. If you'd like to see some, serious stories, you can go to the website of any of the local television stations, KTVU. The NBC station has the Investigatives, so, right, NBC Investigates. So here you will find, longer, very topical pieces that, deal with stuff quite seriously and also in an extended way. So their packages are typically, how long does this run? Let's see, we won't watch it. So they run to 5.5, almost 6 minutes. And I think if you watch a couple of these, which is usually we would do this if we were meeting on other classes, it's very interesting to see that at the 6-minute mark, the amount of information being conveyed is, it's tough. It's tough on the audience, and you can see them doing everything they can in order to make stuff visual and provide the kind of visual support which will make these investigative pieces work. So and then they will also provide a web version of the script below, which is useful and interesting. So if you'd like to see more of these very investigative mode, NBC Investigates is a good place to look. It's part of their brand. So those are just some more examples, I guess. But I'd say what you want to do is starting out. This is an overview of stuff. The first thing to do is, okay, as we were doing in class, what's the issue? Who can you talk to who's doing something interesting? Do you want it to be mostly about them, or do you want it to be about the issue or activity that they're involved in? But every issue or activity is going to have characters who are involved in the story. So eventually you're going to personalize it in some way. So the idea is, who can you reach out to? Aida, I think you got a great idea there, and Dina gave you some good ideas as to how to deal with that. So other people think about it and see what you come up with and try to get it going as soon as you can. Questions? All right. So we're not going to meet up again until when do we meet up again? Let's check out the syllabus. I don't even know if I can find that right now. I'll be informing you as to when we're meeting again. So first description. There we go. So the next time we meet up is after Thanksgiving, December 3rd, December 5th. So after this informational project and then Thanksgiving, the last thing we're doing is it's a 30-second script for a commercial or public service announcement. Very, very short. And that we're doing after Thanksgiving before class ends in December. So this is really the big piece. That final thing is pretty small. Okay? So that's when we meet up next.